Nightbirds on Nantucket by Joan Aiken, Chapter 5. Trouble with Cousin Anne. Captain Casket slips his cable. Arrival in Nantucket, the Casket farm. "We can't stay with your cousin Allerton," Dido said glumly, "and that's for sure." It had taken her less than 10 minutes to reach this conclusion. Cousin Anne Allerton was a frail, erect old lady dressed in black silk with a white bib and cap. She almost fainted when her snapping black eyes first took in the untidy appearance of the two girls. Even Pen's deck dress was fairly bedraggled by this time, with oil and tar on its frills, and as for Dido... "Don't stand on the clean doormat," Cousin Anne said frantically. Keziah, fetch an old sheet directly and put a pail of water to heat. Mercy, just look at that child's feet and her hair. Bring some towels, every stitch, and they have on will have to be burned. Get out the tallow and kerosene. Gracious knows how we are going to get that grease off. Fetch the sulphur and calomel. I don't doubt they'll need a good dose after eating dear knows what foreign truck on board ship. And when you've done that, run down the road and ask Miss Alsop to step up. They'll have to have everything new, I can see that. Furs, flannels, merinos, poplins, and tarlatans, bonnets, of course, and boots. Mercy on us, what a pair of little savages." "I'd rather keep my breeches," Dido said, scowling. "Quiet, child, the idea. Pass me the bath brick, Keziah, so I can give them a good scrubbing." Dido had never been treated so in her life before and was almost too thunderstruck to protest. In no time they were put to bed in a spotlessly neat bedroom with white chintz curtains and fringed white dimity bed covers, a braided rug exactly in the middle of the floor, and a square of oilcloth in front of the washstand. "Why have we got to go to bed in daytime?" grumbled Dido. "We ain't done nothing wrong." "Oh, for land's sake, will you hold your hush? You must stay out of sight of the neighbors till you've something fit to wear." Miss Alsop, the dressmaker, soon arrived, and with Cousin Anne's help, 2 brown calico dresses trimmed with white tape were hastily run up so that the children might put them on, get out of bed, and help hem some more garments. "I won't stand for it," Dido muttered again and again, wringing her neck furiously in her starched collar as she sewed under Cousin Anne's gimlet-eyed supervision. The only respite they had from sewing was when the gaunt and gloomy maid, Keziah, compelled them to swallow another dose of rhubarb or senna or sassafras tea. Cousin Anne seemed quite certain they had brought the plague with them from aboard and must be physicked at frequent intervals to prevent it from spreading through the town. There seemed no escape from the torment. They were never allowed out by themselves, so they could not visit the ship and complain to Captain Casket, nor, for 10 days, did they see anything of him. He was so absorbed in refitting the Sarah Casket with all possible speed that he had entirely forgotten their existence. When he did finally remember them, he reluctantly tore himself away from the wharf to call at Allerton House for half an hour. He was mildly surprised at the transformation which had been wrought in the 2 children. When he caught a glimpse of them through Cousin Anne's parlor window, they were sitting on the back porch, enduring as well as they could a lesson in drawn thread work from sharp Miss Alsop. "Penitence looks almost as she did when her dear mother was alive," Captain Casket remarked, sighing. "Thee has done wonders, Cousin Anne." "I hope you're not expecting me to keep 'em for good, Jabez," Cousin Anne returned sharply. "It was one thing for the child to visit here when she was a little thing, and that poor Sarah of yours was alive to look after her. It would be quite another to have her now. And as for that other heathen girl, I declare they make me quite nervous, the pair of them. I should always be expecting to find the house burnt over my head." She glanced grimly at the 2 children sitting on their upright chairs. No, I thank thee, Cousin Anne," Captain Casket said mildly. "My sister Tribulation said she would be in Nantucket by now. She will look after them." "Well, they may answer," sniffed Cousin Anne. "Tribulation should be able to keep them in order. Why didn't she call on me if she's in Nantucket? She must have passed through New Bedford on her way. Downright uncivil, I call it." Captain Casket took his leave as soon as possible. He was on tenterhooks to get back to the ship. The children did not even see him until he was at the end of the road. "Quick," Dido said then. Miss Alsop had gone indoors for more thread. "Let's go out of him and tell him we can't stick it here." But Cousin Anne says we must not go farther than the end of the road. Well, nuts to Cousin Anne. What does she think we'll do? Get lost in this one-horse town? It was fine summer weather, with a fresh smell of lilac and honeysuckle. Cousin Anne lived in a big yellow and white house set well back from the sidewalk in a quiet street, with a thick privet hedge on either side. Ain't it slow here? Dido said, looking about the peaceful, sunny neighborhood with disapproval. Dull, I calls it. Not a patch on dear old London. Don't I just wish I was there? Come on. I dessay your pa's gone back to the harbour. Let's run. She dashed down the hill, impatiently hitching up her brown calico skirts, with penitence in anxious pursuit. But they had only just come in sight of the Sarah Casket, where refitting was already well underway, when they were overtaken by the dour Keziah, who boxed their ears and marched them back to Cousin Anne's house. There they received another scolding and an extra-large dose, a fearsome one, of salts, pennyroyal, and ginger balsam, all mixed together. For fear of anything they might have picked up down by those nasty docks, and they were sent to bed. It was Dido's idea, sobbed Penitence. She wanted to go. Then it was very weak of you to follow her example, snapped Cousin Anne, rustling out of the bedroom and shutting the door sharply behind her. Pen, I'm surprised at you, Dido said bitterly. Don't you know you didn't ought to put the fault on someone else? But it was true. It was your idea. Oh, blame it. That ain't the point. Well, don't do it again, that's all. I'm trying to get you out of whining, sneaky ways. Pen, don't you see? Thank you, Dido, Pen said in a small, miserable voice. I'll try to remember. Dido had no chance to lead Pen astray again during the rest of the time they were with Cousin Anne. She badly wanted to tackle Captain Casket about the possibility of finding a home for Pen other than with Aunt Tribulation, and about her own passage to England, but he never came near Cousin Anne's house again. So busy was he with refitting and reprovisioning the ship, and asking all newcomers for news of the pink whale. Meanwhile, the children were kept under strict supervision, and were only allowed out for a short walk once a day, to the end of the road and back. However, on the 9th day, when Keziah went to a missionary meeting, Cousin Anne found herself obliged to lie down with a headache brought on, she said, by the tramping of children's feet upstairs in the bedroom. No sooner had she retired than Dido was out of the house like a bullet. You can stay, Pen, if you're scared to come, she said, but I wants to see your pa and get things fixed up ship-shape. Pen said she would remain at home in case Cousin Anne needed anything, so Dido flew down the hill to the wharf side. What was her horror when she reached the berth that had been the Sarah Casket, to find it empty. Hey, she said to a boy who was fishing nearby, where's the ship that was here? Sailed this morning on the early tide. She didn't, you're babbing. He shrugged. What do you think she did then? Walked away up the hill. The old skipper was raring to go. Someone told him that someone else had seen a pink whale off Gay Head. He was missing his first mate when he sailed, but he said he couldn't wait. So up anchor and off. Guess he's halfway to the Grand Banks by now. Oh, Croupice, groaned Dido. She turned and walked wearily back up the steep hill. Her legs felt as heavy as lead. Now we are in a basket. What an old chiseler Captain Casket is. I might have known he'd play us a trick like that, sneaking off on the quiet so's Pen couldn't make a fuss. I'll lay one thing's certain, though. I ain't going to stop any longer with Cousin Anne. Luckily, Cousin Anne was of the same mind. She had had the forethought to collect money for their fares from Captain Casket when he had first called, and the very next day they were dispatched to Nantucket with their new clothes on the packed Adelaide, a small schooner loaded up to her eyebrows with coal, cordwood, and watermelons. Cousin Anne left them in the captain's charge, but it was plain that the harassed man would have little time for them, since part of his cargo was a mother pig and her piglets, which kept escaping and darting about. Mind and behave yourselves now, was Cousin Anne's tart parting injunction. I rode off last Saturday and told Tribulation to expect you any day, so she'll be waiting for you at the Strait Wharf. Give her my remembrances, though why I should send them I don't know, since she was so uncivil as not to call on me when she passed through New Bedford, and I'm sure excuse me, I wish her joy of you. With that, she turned and stumped briskly off up the hill. "Well," Dido said, heaving a sigh, "whatever your Aunt Trib's like, Pen, she can't be sharper than your cousin Anne, so that's one comfort. At least we can enjoy ourselves on the trip over." In this she proved wrong, however. The wind was rising, the glass was falling. The captain soon declared that if he'd had any sense to wait an hour or two, he'd never have put out. Dido was heartily glad that he had not waited. Even being wrecked on the way across to Nantucket was preferable, she thought, to another night with Cousin Anne. But poor penitence, upset and miserable, retired below and stayed there, wedged in as comfortably as Dido could fix her up between a coop of goslings and a barrel of tamarinds. They were not wrecked, but the rising gale delayed them considerably, and dusk had fallen by the time they rounded Brant Point and were safe in Nantucket harbor. Salty, soaked, and shivering, they clambered onto the wharf with their bundles. "Hey," the captain called into the gloom. "Anyone here from the Casket place?" Nobody answered. The two children waited for more than half an hour, until most of the other passengers or people unloading goods from the packet had left. "Well, it ain't no matter of use us standing here all night," Dido said, clenching her teeth to prevent their chattering. "And it ain't half a going to rain in a minute. What'll us do, Pen? Can we walk to your pa's farm? Is it far?" 9 miles, shivered Pen. "It's much too far to walk with our bundles." "Had us better put up at an inn?" "Oh, no, they're sure to be full of horrid rough sailors." "Well, I ain't stopping here," Dido said, and led the way into Nantucket town, with Pen following irresolutely. "Maybe we'll see somebody you know if we wander a bit. Maybe your Aunt Trib reckoned the packet weren't coming and went shopping or started back home." They walked along neat brick sidewalks bordered with trees. The bricks were now beginning to shine with rain. The trees were thrashing wildly. Few people were abroad at this hour. The other passengers from the ship seemed to have melted away into the shadows. Doors and windows in the demure white clapboard houses were shut and shuttered against the rising storm. "Bit of a dead alive hole, innit?" Dido said, shivering. Give me lovely London any day." However, she cheered up somewhat when they reached the wide main street, where a few stores were still open and showing lights. "I can tell you one thing, I'm crabbish hungry," Dido remarked as they passed the chowder parlor, and a heartbreaking smell of food drifted out to them. "Oh, so am I. Got any money?" "Why, no," faltered Penitence. "Cousin Anne only gave me the boat tickets." Dido said. She hefted her bundle thoughtfully just ahead of them. On the corner of Main and Union Streets was a store with windows brightly lit up and a sign that said, "Bracy and Starbucks, Ships Outfitters, and General Soft Goods." "I'm a-going in here," Dido said, and did so, ignoring Pen's apprehensive squeak. She addressed herself to the man behind the counter. "Hey, mister, I've got a load of clobber here, and I don't want. Will you buy it off me?" To Pen's horror, the man was quite prepared to buy the carefully made dresses and frilly underwear considered suitable by Cousin Anne. "What do I want with them?" Dido said. "I'd sooner have a pair of breeches any day." She bought herself a red flannel shirt and a pair of denim trousers for $1.62, and still had $2 left. "Come on, Pen," she said. "We'll go get us some prog. By the way," she asked the outfitter, "you don't know if there's anybody in town waiting for a Miss Pen Casket, do you?" "Little Miss Casket of the Casket Farm," he said. "Why, yes, the old mule's been in every day of the week. Guess he's still around. Mr. Hussey at the Grampus Inn knows not to lose him till the packet's been in an hour." "Old mule," said Dido apprehensively. "Who the blazes is the old mule?" "Why, old Mungo," the storekeeper told her. "Everybody in Nantucket knows Mungo. He's Captain Casket's mule. Old Mrs. Casket, Captain Casket's mother, always used to send him into market with her eggs and farm truck a list of groceries she wanted, and Mr. Folger at the stores would take the eggs and load him up with the flour and stuff and send him back. Old Mungo knows the way to Sol's Hill as well as a Christian. He's 20 years old if he's a day. Are you little Miss Casket, then? My, how you have growed." Dido didn't wait to chat. "Which way is the Grampus Inn?" she asked. "Come on, Pen, hurry." Slipping and stumbling, they ran along the cobbled streets, scaring a number of sheep who appeared to have come into the town to take shelter, and reached a building with a wildly swinging sign that showed a grampus in full sport. Below the sign was tethered a mule cart. The dejected mule, his coat sleek with rain, seemed trying to keep his head dry by hiding it between his forelegs. "Is that your pa's cart?" asked Dido. I'm not sure," Penitence confessed. "I never took much note of the cart." "Well, is this Mungo?" "I was always too scared of him to notice what he was like." "Oi!" said Dido, going round the mule's front end. "Psst! Hey, is your name Mungo?" The mule made no response except to give her a despairing glance from one white-rimmed eye backward between his legs. "I'm going in and ask," Dido said. "Oh dear, I'm sure you shouldn't go into the inn. Go into an inn," Pen lamented. "There will be dreadful people. It isn't ladylike behavior." "Oh, scrape ladylike behavior," Dido snapped impatiently. "If you want to get soaked and starved, I don't." She marched into the inn, having assented that it was indeed Captain Casket's mule, and the cart standing outside. She said, "Well, if he's waited for us every day this week, it won't kill him to wait another 20 minutes. And to Pen's fright, she ordered 3 bowls of clam chowder. However, the chowder was so welcome when it came, savory and hot, full of tender little clams, that Pen at length overcame her qualms and consented to eat it. "Who's the 3rd bowl for?" she asked. "Why, poor old Mungo, of course," Dido said reprovingly. "If he's got 9 miles to go through the wet, he ought to have summat to stay his stomach." "Will he like it?" Pen quavered. "We'll soon see, won't us? If he don't, I dare say you can do with a second help." However, the mule proved quite willing to accept a helping of the chowder, and appeared to improve greatly in his spirits once he had snuffled it down. The dishes were returned to the inn. Dido helped Pen into the cart and wrapped her in a quantity of sheepskins, which she found under the seat. Then she untied Mungo's head, slapped him with the reins, and they were off. "Whiz-o!" she said as they rattled through the dimly lit streets. "This is something like, ain't it? I loves driving. If only it didn't rain and blow quite so hard. I say, ain't we lucky Mungo knows the way? We'd never find it in this dark." Pen assented faintly. She had soon left the box and was huddled down in the bottom of the cart, trying to keep herself from slipping about. In no time, they were out of the little town and making their way along a high and exposed sandy track in open country. The wind and rain buffeted them, and it was too dark to see anything except some low-growing shrubs by the roadside. A distant, continuous roar could be heard to their right, and from ahead of them came louder, intermittent booming. "What's all that row?" Dido said. "It's the waves." "But we've just come from the sea." "Nantucket's an island, don't forget," Pen sighed drearily. "What you can hear is the breakers on the south and east shores. Oh, how I hate it." "Cheer up," Dido said. "Don't you like swimming and paddling? Us'll have some bang-up times when this gale blows over. I used to bathe in the Thames, but this'll be far and away better. I say, where's the old Sarah got to now, eh? Don't you reckon it was a mean trick of your pa to slope off like that without a word? I'd have liked to have said goodbye to Nate. He was a real first-class boy. And to old Jenkins, I hope I see them again sometime." Pen, who for some time past had been growing more and more melancholy, now fairly burst into tears. "Oh, I don't suppose we'll ever see any of them again," she sobbed. "They'll probably be wrecked in the scale, and I'll have to spend the rest of my life in this hateful, lonely place with nobody but tribulation. And I hope I die soon, I do. I'd sooner be dead with dear Mamma." "Now, Pen," Dido began, but then, instead of scolding, she reached over backwards and patted what she could find of Pen in the darkness. She thought her companion's remarks both ungrateful and poor-spirited, but the day had been long and the weather nasty. Pen had some excuse. "I say," she suggested instead, "let's hope Aunt Triv has a huge big fire blazing and a socking great jug of red-hot cocoa, eh?" Pen made no reply beyond a sniff. "How about a song to keep ourselves cheerful? One of Nate's?" And Dido began to sing in a hoarse but tuneful voice. "Oh, fierce is the ocean and wild is the sound, but the Isle of Nantucket is where I am bound. Sweet Isle of Nantucket, where the grapes are so red, and the light flashes nightly on Sankaty Head." Inspired by this, Mungo the mule actually broke into a canter, and so they went briskly on their way through the storm. Even so, it seemed a long journey, and both of them were thoroughly soaked and stiff with cold by the time that Mungo pricked his ears, accelerated his pace, and made a sudden swerve to the right. In spite of the storm, the night was not altogether dark. For there was a full moon now behind the driving rack of sea mist, and ahead of them a narrow lane could be seen leading uphill from the main highway. From time to time, dark forms got up and bundled away off the track as they approached. "I'm glad we ain't in Hyde Park," Dido remarked. "If we was, these'd be wolves, likely as not. As it is, I suppose, there's some more of those sheep you seem to have such a lot of. Hey, Pen, here's a gate. Croupus, did you ever see such a peculiar one? Is this your pa's place?" "I think so," Pen sighed faintly, peering forward in the gloom. "Yes, he put up the gate. It's made of a sperm whale's jawbone. Oh, I am so cold and wet and miserable." "Never mind. In 10 minutes you'll be tucked in bed with a warming pan. There's a barn anyhow. Mungo seems to think he lives here." In fact, after they had passed the gate, which was like an enormous wishbone, Mungo trotted into the big barn without worrying any farther about his human passengers. Penitence was rather impatient when Dido insisted on unharnessing him and giving him a rub with a wisp of hay. "Just in case," she said, "your Auntie Trib don't fancy stepping out into the wet. All right, come on now, bring your traps." There appeared to be quite a group of farm buildings set in the hollow of the hillside with a few trees round about. Not a light showed anywhere, and it was hard to be sure which was the dwelling house. "Come on, Pen," Dido urged. "After all, you live here. Show us the way." "Yes," Pen said, shivering, "but we were here so little. Mamma took me away on so many visits that we were hardly ever at home." At last they found what seemed to be a house door, and Pen, a sudden memory returning from earlier childhood, stood on tiptoe and discovered a key hanging on a nail. "Hoorah!" Dido said as they stepped inside. "Ain't I glad to get out of the wet? Looks as if Aunt Trib must have gone to bed. Know where the candles is kept, Pen?" No, I forgot," Pen said dolefully. "Oh, isn't it dark and cold?" Luckily, feeling about, Dido chanced to knock over a candle. When it was restored and lit, they saw that they were in a large old-fashioned kitchen, which, given warmth and light, would have been a cheerful enough place. There was a big pot-bellied stove, black, unlit, and unwelcoming, a brightly colored braided rug, and a dresser covered with dishes. An enormous grandfather clock ticked solemnly against the wall. The place was clean and tidy, but silent, empty, and deathly cold. "Oh," whispered Pen, "what shall we do now?" "Do? Why, go to bed. Things will be better in the morning," Dido said stoutly. "Where's the stairs?" Pen opened a door, disclosing a steep, narrow flight, and Dido went ahead with the candle. "Hey," she said, checking to let Pen catch up. "Look, there's a light under that door at the end of the passage. Must be your Auntie Trib's room. We better go and tell her we've come." But," whispered Pen tremulously, "supposing it isn't her?" She clutched Dido's arm. "Why, you sapskull, who else could it be? Come on." Dido marched boldly along the passage and rapped on the door. "Miss Casket," she called. "It's us, Penitence and Dido, just arrived." From the room beyond a voice replied, "And about time, too. Wipe your feet on the mat before you come in." Even Dido quailed momentarily at the sound of the voice. It was low, harsh, and grating. There was something very forbidding, and something strangely familiar about it. Her hand trembled slightly as she spilled a drop of hot wax from the candle, which went out. Then, summoning resolution, she pushed open the door and went in. By the light of one dim candle by the bedside, they could see a woman in the bed, propped against many pillows, regarding them fixedly. And that is the end of Chapter 5.